Meeting of November 26, 2024.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, Westford. Welcome to the Select Board meeting of November 26, 2024. We'll start with a Pledge of Allegiance led by Andrea.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So under open forum, Friday, Chris and I had a chance to go up to the highway department, highway barn, whatever you want to call it. It was training for our new and old snowplow operators, because you can't just drive those things. You have to know what you're doing. But bridge weights, I was amazed that the things, the bridge weights, bridge distance, bridge widths, the all the policies and procedures to make sure we do the job, but then do it safely. So it made me appreciate that job, and I think it's in keeping with Thanksgiving. Remember and say thanks to our town employees, because Thursday when we're eating whatever we choose to eat, turkey, ham, whatever, there'll be still men and women in the fire station, the police station, on the roads, protecting us. So, thanks to the first responders and for all of our employees who work all year long to make this town what it is. Anybody else for open forum? Kristen?
I don't have anything. Okay. Thank you.
So 705 agenda item is a banner request for Santa Tour, Westford Firefighters Association on December 2nd and 11th. sorry, the banner request is for December 2nd through the 11th at First Parish Church. Also, annual tree collection, also Westford Firefighters Association, that will be January 6th through 15th in front of First Parish Church. Request the Town Common Bandstand on December 25th through January 3rd of 2025. Menorah display requested by the Shabbat of the Shabbat Valley. Also on December 29th, Shabbat Valley requests a town common for a Hanukkah celebration from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. And we also request for the town common on May 4th, rain date of May 11th, 2025, by United Methodist Church of Westford for a church service from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And that's the list, and a special license for Winter Farm Nights, applicant Sandra Habe of Good Picking Farm, December 7th, 2024, from 3 to 6 p.m. Is there a motion to approve, subject to public safety comments?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And next we have, I think, well, can we go 707 or not?
No, it's a public hearing, so we have 5 minutes. Do number 8. We could do some of the grants.
Yeah, we can do the, yes, just go to item 11 and do, we can't do, well, can we do 8, really? I mean, it's probably not. Let's just do 11.
Sure. So getting into the grants under Town Manager Report, we have an Executive Office of Elder Affairs Formula Grant for COA Council on Aging staffing in the amount of $40,417 as requested by the Council on Aging. And then we received a grant from the Mass Cultural Council for fiscal year 25 local cultural council allocation in the amount of $11,000 as requested by the Town Manager's Office.
So is there a motion to accept money?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then purchase orders, there's a slight change in this dollar amount. So it's CDWG for Microsoft licenses for the cloud-based file storage in the amount of $115,568.12. The $89,000 is allocated by ARPA, which you already approved at a previous meeting, and then the rest will be out of the balance of the technology department budget.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
And then we still have 2 minutes. Would you like me
Yep,
to do contracts?
yes.
Sure. So Clifton Larson Allen for the fiscal 25 to 27 audit services in the amount of $168,000 as requested by the accounting department.
question on that.
Sure.
It has a master services agreement that's included in that. What's the driving document that we sign? How does that play in the contract? The master services agreement?
Yep, so they have their master services agreement. We're reviewing that with council to make sure that it jives with our
Okay, that's being reviewed
contracts.
then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Executive Office of Public Safety and Security for the Municipal Local Cybersecurity Grant in the amount of $18,750. We already received the $75,000 as requested by the Technology Department. And then a slew of grants for, contracts for Guardian Energy Management Solutions for fiscal '25 energy efficiency projects in the total amount of $860,000, $305. The incentives will be $767,700, and the net cost to the town will be $92,605, as requested by the town manager's office. Natural System Utilities for professional wastewater treatment facility contract operation services in the amount of $214,763.40. JB Painting for the Cameron Senior Center exterior painting project in the amount of $37,500 as requested by the Facilities Department. Alpine Environmental for the Cameron Senior Center lead abatement in the amount of $47,420 as requested by the Facilities Department.
I have a question about that one.
Sure.
When they do the lead abatement, is that going to affect the services at the Cameron in any way? Since they will be doing lead abatement and dust will be flying?
So it's exterior, and
Oh,
they
okay.
will be making sure that everything is precautionary to make sure that the center can be operational during that
Okay.
time.
Thanks.
Sure. Neshoba Analytical for residential well PFAS testing in the amount of $20,000 as requested by the Health Department. You approved that ARPA funds a few meetings ago. And then tie and bond for the MS4 permit year 7 compliance in the amount of $76,500 as requested by the engineering department.
So move to approve.
Second. Do you want to have anything pending on Article 1, John, or do you want us to accept it?
Well, I think accept it. I mean, I think that there's some language in there I would not necessarily sign if that were one of the guiding documents, but
As long as town council reviews it, you're okay?
Yes, I'm
Okay,
fine
so
with that.
We have motion and a second. All in favor?
I,
So back to our public hearing, and the beauty of public hearing tonight is it's run by the tree warden. So there's no confusion on the board of who's opening and closing public meetings because it's Kyle's hearing.
Good evening, Select Board members. Thank you for allowing me the time
You don't
to
have to open it?
No.
hold my,
Because it's a tree warden hearing in our meeting, so it's not our hearing, it's his hearing.
And I'm sorry, Kyle's opened the hearing? I mean, the hearing still has to be opened.
Yes.
By somebody,
I
okay?
will do
That's
that.
all I'm saying.
Yep. Thank you for allowing me the time to host this meeting during your meeting, this hearing during your meeting. We're here tonight to consider a tree permit request from National Grid. With me tonight is Scott Richardson, who works for Northern Tree, representing National Grid. With that, I'll open up the public tree hearing and give a brief introduction. So National Grid is proposing to do some line improvement work, installing new poles and wires on a stretch of Groton Road from basically Nutting Road to just beyond the intersection with North Main Street. As part of that project, they've looked at the trees in the area that would have potential impact on the infrastructure improvements that they're going to perform, and have requested trimming and/or removal of up to 87 trees, which was the original request. Since the original request, Scott has met with some residents, re-reviewed the area, and him and I took a ride out last Friday and kind of re-looked at the area. And the request has now dropped down to 38 trees to be trimmed or remove, which
They're now proposing 18 trees to be trimmed. I'm sorry. 7 trees to be trimmed and 31 removals. With that, I'll turn it over to Scott to present his petition.
Evening, council members. I'm Scott Richardson from Northern Tree Service. I work as a subcontractor for National Grid on certain projects like this to improve the infrastructure in several towns, including Westford. Basically, what the plan is that stretch of Groton Road from, like Mr. Fox said, from Nutting Road to St. Augustine, North Street to Nutting Road, is going to be improved with new poles, different wire structure. But in that process, the poles will be taller than what is there, based on recent standards that we have to now maintain. So in that process, that stretch of road, there are several trees that will be either too close for safety on that stretch, or in the way of putting in the pole or a new structure, wire configuration, such. So we basically bring this to the tree hearing meeting to see if it would be possible to either remove the trees that I've indicated or trim the others. And that's where we stand.
Thank you, Scott. So a couple housekeeping items for the folks viewing at home and in this room that may or may not know. So a few definitions. So a public shade tree is any tree located within the town's right-of-way or on the boundary of the town's right-of-way is by definition a public shade tree. The laws of Massachusetts under Chapter 87 state that any tree that can't be determined if it's a shade tree or a private tree should be considered a shade tree. I mostly bring that up because I believe at least some of the trees on this list are private trees, but we weren't able to find bounds, and with the variable right-of-way that exists on Groton Road, it was inconclusive whether some of these were public or private. So we erred on the side of being conservative in calling them shade trees. The reason we're here tonight is any removal or trimming of public shade trees requires a hearing before the tree warden, which is me, also the Public Works Director. I should have introduced myself. And should there be no objection in writing, the tree warden may grant a permit to a permittee to trim or remove trees. So with that, I will open up to any public comments.
So I guess for the benefit of, again, of those listening who may not know, are we talking about pine trees, maples? Are these viable trees? Are these sort of what we consider to be, common pines? And are they?
It's a variety. Mike can put the list up on the screen.
It's a variation of species.
And in terms of size and width, are we talking about,
Yeah.
trees of a foot around or 3 feet around?
Yeah, I categorize trees into various groups based on size. At DBH is where we measure them, which is diameter at breast height. So basically about 4 feet from the ground. So in the 2.5 inch to 5.5 inch range, they're proposing 5 removals. 6 inch to 9 3/4 inch, 8 removals. 10 to 12 inch trees, 7 removals. 16.5 to 19 3/4 inches, 6 removals. And 20 to 28 inch trees, 5 removals. And the list up here was it's both the original list that we published in the advertisement for the tree hearing and the updated list that Scott provided me yesterday that reduced the number of affected trees from 87 to 38. You can see there's a variety of pines and mostly pines and oaks.
And is the removal, I guess, is the new wiring, is a matter of better reliability? Is it a matter of higher capacity? What's
Probably both. It comes to me as a reliability issue, that they're going to reconfigure the whole conductor series, so it could be they're upgrading the power, which means more space between wires.
I live on Hunting Road. If you sneeze, the power goes out, so I'm not opposed to it.
We're trying to
but-
stop that.
yeah, okay. Did you- Tom?
Yeah, just for Kyle, so I think members of the public probably understand that to get better reliability and make changes, some trees will be affected, and I think the public also expects that we'll be careful and judicious in what we take out. It sounds like you've done that too. The other question I often get is, what are we doing overall to maintain just the tree stock? We understand in some places you need to remove a tree, but are we adding other trees other places? And I know you work on that, but maybe you could just speak to that for the.
Yeah,
benefit of
that's a
the
great
public.
question. Thank you for prompting that. We are very cognizant of the trees that do get removed, either because they're risk trees or through necessary infrastructure improvement projects. We did run this past spring, our first annual tree seedling giveaway, and where we gave away 400 tree saplings to residents of Westford. And so hopefully the majority of them got planted, and in the next 3 years, we'll see them as much bigger and more vibrant trees. We intend to do that again this spring, and to kind of continue that program. As long as the demand is there, we'll keep churning this program out. And I anticipate doing about another 400 this spring. And when we do that, working with Sue Thomas previously, we're really focusing on providing varieties that are both native to Massachusetts and fit in the right space. If they're going to be under power lines, a shorter tree would be more appropriate. If they're further back, or depending on the soils and sun and shade, we provide that info on the different species we offer. And we try and give a good variety in those 4 species we offer.
Thanks.
So I have some logistical questions for the neighborhood and for people out there. So first of all, when do you expect to start this work?
That's kind of debatable upon what happens here tonight at the hearing.
Assume for a moment that things get approved, when would you start it?
We're probably looking at about a month out by the time I revisit everything, make sure I've got all people, private tree.
Well, that was my next question. For those trees that are sort of I'll call them on the border, that the abutters may think that they own the trees. Have we talked to those folks about these trees?
I have not gone that far yet, based on the knowledge that I know I need to have a tree hearing first. Obviously, if either party says no, I have to revisit that and come up with
Okay.
some solution as to, can I make this work or not?
Okay, so.
And that'll be part of the permit approval. It's kind of a standard piece I put in there, is that the contractor needs to touch base with every abutter.
Right. Once you start the work, how long do you anticipate it's going to take?
It's quite a project. That's almost 3/4 of a mile, and some of those trees are a little difficult to work with. So I would guess, long-term, maybe 3-4 weeks.
And that would be tree removal only, not the new poles and the new
Correct, yeah,
structure.
that would be strictly just my portion
Just your
of preparing
portion
it.
of it. I realize that you don't have any say over the poles themselves, and we'll have to work with National Grid about removal of poles and installation of the poles, since we've had some experience with that before. Okay, and I guess, I think those were my, oh, and then I know, if you may not be able to answer this, you said that the poles that are going in are taller?
Yes.
Do you know by how much taller?
They vary on certain locations, but generally, all of them are at least 5 feet taller, some of them are 10.
Wow. So pretty tall poles.
There is a portion of that, however, based on their calculations, that even though they're putting in a 10-foot taller pole, another portion of that actually gets put
Sunk into the
further into
ground.
the ground, so, a new 10-foot pole may only be 8 feet taller pole top.
Those are my logistical questions for you.
Chris?
So I think I just got confused by one of your questions. So from an order of operations standpoint, the people whose trees, regardless of whether or not they're in the right of way or not, they have been all notified of this hearing?
Not directly notified, but every tree that is subject to this, per Mass General Law, Chapter 87, has been The notice of this hearing has been placed on the trees for at least 3 weeks.
Okay, so, somebody went away for a long weekend.
Correct.
They've had ample time
Absolutely,
to get into
yeah.
contact with you, and you said earlier you have had some residents contact you and you have
Correct.
worked with them?
We have,
Okay, so we can assume at this point, everybody should have had their say, and it feels like they're happy with the plan as you've laid out.
I assume that,
I'm not
yes.
sure happy would be the right word.
Somewhat accepting.
Any of the ones that I have talked to directly have agreed that, yes, I can either prune their trees or cut them down.
And I guess just to follow up on that, I know you said there has to be written objection. Have you received any written objections?
I have not. Yep, correct.
John?
Yeah, well, first of all, I was glad to see the reduction. What prompted the reduction of the trees? I mean, you went from 80-something to 38?
Yeah. When I originally looked at the project, I was unaware that that circuit running down Groton Road was up for what they call scheduled maintenance trimming this year. So when I got my project, there was a lot more vegetation that had grown up into the wires. And based on what I have to do to get the new project through, I identified more trees that I thought needed to be trimmed or removed. But under the veg management plan for the system circuit trimming, a lot of that was reduced. So I went back and re-evaluated the trees that I needed to work on for my project.
Yeah. I noticed a lot of them were damaged, so they would have to be taken down anyway.
There are still some on the list that I felt, even though they had been trimmed, probably aren't in the best of health,
Yeah.
that I would be able to remove under my guidelines.
I noticed on one stretch, just this side of Pilgrim, along Groton Road, it looked like there'd been some trimming already, some fresh cuts along the thing. Was that done under any just normal maintenance, or how?
Yeah, so that's the program Scott was just referencing. So in the spring, section 14 of chapter 87
Right.
of the tree laws has a clause that allows the tree warden to work directly with utilities to permit maintenance tree cutting, tree trimming rather, for utility lines specifically. And they have specific ANSI requirements. Basically, it's that box cutting out around the wires to keep them safe. And we approved that contract, and I put notice out on the town website and newsflash back in the spring. And as Scott said, it was, the timing was overlapping. Even though I granted the permit for the vegetation management trimming, I didn't have a schedule at the time of when they were going to come through. And even though Scott and I discussed that the two projects may overlap, again, being conservative in approach, I had him provide a full list of trees, assuming the veg management wouldn't come through in time. So that was the big reason for the difference.
Okay. Thanks, that's all.
Any comments from the audience? Anybody online?
No one online with their hand raised, no.
Okay, so
Well, with that, I will close the hearing, and I will prepare to grant the permit conditioned upon coordination with all abutters. And I will also request that the select board choose to not take up agenda item number 6, as it's not necessary, because there was no objection to the project. That item was on the agenda because if there is objection at a tree hearing, the select board is the ultimate authority to grant a permit under objection. Given no objection, we don't need to take that item up.
Okay,
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for your time.
thank you very much.
I'd like to thank you all for your time, Kyle as well, and I'll have a safe and happy holiday.
You too.
Thanks.
next we have update on the West Street Pedestrian Safety Improvements Project, and Paul, our illustrious town engineer, will give us the benefit of his wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you for the glorious introduction, Mr. Chair. Paul Starrett, Town Engineer. Here also in the room is Tom Henkel, Chair of the Pedestrian Safety Committee. The Engineering Department has partnered with the Pedestrian Safety Committee on all of these pedestrian safety improvement projects, including this one at the intersection of North Main and West Street. So this project had gone out in accordance with your policy, which we celebrate every time we go through it, where we meet with the Pedestrian Safety Committee on any project that includes pedestrian safety improvements, and we go through them. At that point, we invite abutters. In this case, we invited over 300 people because we included Graniteville Woods, which is a big neighborhood. But we met with them and invited the abutters, had a great meeting back on November 19th. Both Chris Barrett and you, Mr. Chair, were present at that meeting where we presented what you see on the screen here now. Got some very good feedback and participation from residents and abutters. And this plan that you see before you, minus one little stretch of sidewalk in this area here that was requested to be removed by the abutter in this home, didn't feel it was necessary to build a sidewalk all the way to his driveway. Instead, we could just terminate it at what is currently a walking path by deed and prescription to Graniteville Woods. As you recall from when they built Graniteville Woods, is a trail that goes up in through the woods up to what's called Central Park at Graniteville Woods, and which was incidentally, according to the Zoning Board of Appeals, was supposed to be paved and illuminated. They were supposed to put lights in there, but with a period of back and forth with the butters at the corner and further up, everyone agreed that it wasn't necessary to pave or to put lights on this path that goes up into Graniteville Woods. A happy resolution to that, I'm glad to say. But the path is still there and is still used, and we heard anecdotes during our meeting with the Pedestrian Safety Committee that there are in fact groups of young people that go back and forth up of this trail. Of course, we have multiple destinations. Blessed Trinity Parish is right here, locally known as St. Catherine. Blanchard School is beyond. We also learned during the Pedestrian Safety Committee that D-Bus actually stops right here at the path going up to Graniteville Woods and lets some of the older students, I imagine it to be the high school kids, get off there so they can walk up to their home. So that meeting also gave us the opportunity to present this new layout. Initially, we brought this to the Pedestrian Safety Committee last year without this rounded corner here. So we were still getting speeds around this corner that were unsatisfactory in the event that we are now introducing pedestrians to this intersection. Town meeting gave us some additional funds for looking into the design, and what changed this was Blessed Trinity had expressed their concerns about crossing from their main property over to the massive parking lot on the other side of the road. They've been doing this for, as long as the church has been there, and typically would get an area car from the police department on Sundays or Saturdays when they had their high volumes, but that wasn't always available to them. They didn't have any handicapped access. So they approached us about putting in a formalized crosswalk with rapid flashing beacons because of the speeds and volumes of traffic in that area and their limited use. In exchange for that, they were very willing to talk to us about an easement on their property in order for us to build this teed-up intersection. So West Street currently just comes out straight here, and it would end right about there and come over to here. So cars can go around that corner at speed, which we observed through our traffic studies to be, in the 35, 40 mile an hour, which is way too fast with the expectation of pedestrians in the traveled way. So with this cooperation from the church, which will subsequently need a lot more involvement from the select board, remember, we're still in the preliminary design stage. We'll be coming back with more information about doing an easement or a taking on the corner of this parking lot so that we can tee up this intersection. Once we do that, we'll have a much safer walking condition for what we know to be a very active walking community in Graniteville Woods. There are pedestrians up and down. This condition as it exists today, even as dangerous as it is, they're still out walking and using this. So we'll be making it safer for them to cross this by pulling out this curb line where it exists today. We'll be pulling this out here. That will force vehicles to slow down in order to actuate more of a 90-degree turn instead of the sweeping turn, which they can do at speed. Very similar to what we did at the intersection of Boston Road, which famously, after we completed, I got a phone call from a resident who was irate at the quote-unquote imbecile who designed the intersection and insisted how upset she was because she had to really slow down in order to go around that corner. And when I explained to her that that was the goal because we were introducing pedestrians at that intersection for the first time, she was very apologetic, very much appreciated what we were done there. So we're doing the same thing here. We're going to bump this out and force vehicles to make a deliberate turn, which means they'll have to slow. So now, even if there are pedestrians that cross here because young people walking all up to the intersection, may or may not happen. But if those that are going to cross, just jaywalk across the road, at least now we're forcing vehicles to come to a slow speed and they will be accelerating at this point. So instead of getting vehicles to decelerate to a young person or someone crossing in the road, they will be accelerating so they can control that much better than having to jam on the brakes. Safer condition in either way. And then, of course, we'll also get churchgoers and church users to cross the road much more safely than they're doing now. This is currently scheduled on capital for construction appropriation based on at this point, we have a good design estimate, and that'll happen in March. We're still working with town leadership on scheduling out some of our projects for construction because Boston Road is in another culvert project, and I'm very careful about the timing and the actual construction projects because we can't overwhelm our workforce, either in the engineering department, more importantly in the police department, because we'll need traffic details on all of these projects. So the details of when we'll actually be breaking ground on this project yet to be determined. And of course, that'll all be based on what town meeting does with, what town leadership first does with the capital plan and then what town meeting approves. So that's our goal in our project, and I'm also happy to report after 19 years, this is the first project I can bring to you where we don't have to cut down any trees.
Any questions to the board, comments, John?
Any change in the exit from the parking lot at St. Catherine's as far as distance
So,
from
yeah,
the intersection?
Yeah, we
Not this
have
one,
to
the one
make
up
some
there.
improvements here because there's an existing pedestrian path there. Let me say
You
first of all.
talking about the north side, John?
Yeah, also the
Oh,
one
up in
up
here,
there, but
yes,
yeah.
right. So let me first say that the parish has been very accommodating, very cooperative. It's been a delight, actually, to work with them. And we're talking about giving up parking spaces, which is huge for any nonprofit organization like that. But one of the conversations that we are having with them is to create a safer condition. If we can somehow, if they can look at rearranging their parking lot, which is designed now to be in and out, circular, that's the angular, in and out, because that's the angled parking. But if there's a way we can get them to close this driveway, it's a big ask right now, but our design team at TCE is looking into some options for them to consider, and that, John, would be ideal. It's still a safe condition, especially because when the parking lot is busy and active, it creates the one thing that traffic engineers like the most when it comes to safety, and that is congestion. Because when it's congested, you can't go fast. So it's slowing people down is better. But we're looking at an option to terminate this driveway entrance here, because we're gonna give them more parking that way, but.
The other question I had was the total cost, design and construction. What are you projecting?
So we're asking capital for $800,000. It's very conservative, admittedly, but we've never come back and asked for more money. And the design has been $90,000 because we had an original appropriation, but needed additional design funds after we realized that the original concept was. It was gonna work, but when the church opened up about that easement and making that land available to us, teeing up this intersection became a big priority for me.
Yeah, I think it's a good change. Thanks.
Anybody else? And also thanks to the parish, because they let us use their meeting hall for the hearing, which is, it's always nice to have a local spot so that people can just walk out the door if they want to and come visit, as opposed to have to drive up to town hall. So
We've had great success with that. We met for the Plain Road sidewalk, we met at the NAB school. Had a little bit of a hiccup when we did the Oak Hill project, and we met at the NAB Lake Country Club because
It's a good time.
They opened the bar. And, but we got some good feedback. Well, thank you, so
And also, just to appreciate, because, we're not required to do these hearings. Engineering does that, and other staff, so we appreciate that, because, getting that feedback from the butters is priceless.
I always learn something. That's why I do it, because, we see lines on a piece of paper, but these people live in those lines. And they always have the perspective that, oh, gee, why didn't I think of that? We always take credit for the ideas, but, So no further action necessary. We'll be back as we develop and move forward, especially regarding the easements.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Paul.
Paul.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
Yes,
Thank
same to you.
I believe we're going to pass on the district gate for tonight.
Right, so the First
Thanks
Parish
for coming, Tom.
Community Preservation Grant Agreement is not yet ready for the board. We thought we were gonna be ready. We had some hiccups. Town council's currently reviewing the agreement, so we hope to bring that back in December. So, no further discussion needed this evening.
So that on to our old and new business, and the first is to review and update the remote meeting participation policy, which I think you've all I know John had some comments that,
Yeah, just kind of wordsmithing, but it,
Yeah, could I tee this up a little
yeah,
bit?
yeah,
just so the board
just
understands what we're
by
working
that background, said we have all reviewed it, and
Yeah, so,
we had one comment, but.
so this,
Some comments,
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. I didn't get
so
to
this policy was developed when the Commonwealth first allowed remote participation, which was issued under 940 CMR 29.10, issued on November 11th, 2011. The Select Board officially adopted remote participation on March 13th, 2012. And first put a policy into place at that point in time. And then at the bottom of this document, you'll see that the policy was updated or amended 3 additional times. So the most recent policy was approved by the Select Board, Board of Selectmen at that point in time on July 23rd, 2013. After having some discussions with Scott related to this policy, we wanted to revisit it. So first of all, I just want to be clear that this is the policy under the old remote meeting participation. We currently are operating today under the temporary remote meeting law put into place under the COVID laws, I will say. So we will not know the outcome of that until March. So this policy still is, I would say, not used because we're operating under the temporary. But if there is a case where the current temporary provisions are not extended past March of 2025. We want to make sure that the select board is well positioned and other boards and committees are well positioned to participate in remote participation. So on the track changes of this document, I have some suggestions and some questions. But so ultimately wanted the feedback. I don't intend that the board would vote on this tonight unless they're comfortable, but this is more so for conversation related to the original remote participation law.
So Andrew, you've reserved your spot in the queue.
Oh, but I thought John had.
Well, I just had a couple, and it's where we say, and this is mainly just wording, and we talk about a local board of select board,
Yep, we'll take that board out.
and then the other one was, policy is separate from the remote participation temporary law. And I just thought temporary should be first, the temporary remote participation law.
Thank you.
I mean, I just thought that was just tidying up the wording. The rest of it looked okay to me. I didn't have any problems with that.
Oh, well, I guess Kristen and maybe everybody else did. You wanted comments back on your questions, which,
Just today, we can have this conversation this evening.
okay. So, just a couple of, and looking at your comments and your questions, I guess I do think some of this needs to be updated. It says, can the attendee have their camera off? Well, I'm certainly somebody who at times has their camera off. And so, I think that we should be permitted to have our cameras off. And certainly, we've had people who've participated remotely who've had their cameras off, either because they can't get it to work or
Right,
whatever
technical
reason.
reasons, yeah.
So I think that we certainly, that should be permissible.
We actually had one meeting where we had a nursing mom on a committee, and, she went through hoops to try to cover it, just turn the camera off, it's,
Yeah.
you're right, there are cases where, for personal reasons, with family around, you want it off.
Yeah.
And I know that, we originally set this policy that only one person could be remote, but it seems to me, I know, Scott and Tom, I know you both traveled, and it's been, recently, there was a time when both of you were not here and, wanted to participate remotely. So I think as long as there's a quorum of 3 in the room, that remote participation is fine, by 2.
Yeah, I
What
think
else?
it's easier now. It's easier to work with Zoom and other
Right.
ways of doing that instead of just by,
So are we saying that we just need a quorum?
In
'Cause
the
this-
room.
Yes, because this isn't specific just to the select board, right? So
Correct.
Well,
there's-
that was my final question,
Okay.
is, and I'll
Sorry, I
ask that.
didn't mean to jump
No,
ahead.
is this just specific to the select board, or is this specific to all committees and boards in the town, including the planning board?
So my understanding is that the planning board, during my time, has had participants participating remotely, or board members participating remotely. That is under the temporary order.
Right.
I would have to research if the planning board had used this policy in the past before COVID-19.
I guess I think
Orders.
they might have used it in the past to have their if a member is they had to, because one of their members was often overseas.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm sure that they have used it in the past, but I think,
I think this is separate from hybrid
right,
participation. This is, and my understanding is once the select board adopts remote participation for the town of Westford, that any board or committee can use it. When this policy went into place, I don't know if it was disseminated to all board and committees. I can research that.
I can't remember.
well, I think the planning board's still operating under this. Aren't they?
No board or committees operating under this right now. We're
Well,
all
I mean,
operating under the
that's,
temporary
uh,
provisions.
I've been in meetings where they've had somebody participating remotely. by
Right, under the-
telephone.
Right, because under
under
the,
COVID,
under the temporary
one.
provisions.
This is,
But they're still not using the hybrid, they're still not using
Right, so
remote
that's totally,
participation.
well, hybrid is separate because hybrid is for attendees, not board members to
Yeah, I
use.
understand it, yeah. Okay.
Tom?
I would agree with Andrea on camera off being fine, 2 people remote, fine. Also, from a personal preference, I think if we, to your question on number 7, Kristen, I think if it's specified that video's off, if they're operating a motor vehicle and they're operating hands-free, I mean, lots and lots of meetings have participants that way now, and it's not
Right.
considered.
Yep.
Like Westford could decide to have more stringent requirements than the state, but I guess I feel comfortable if the state is allowing hands-free.
Yep.
I mean, in
That we're okay.
2013, you were typically on a handheld phone, and it was a distraction. It was with Bluetooth, pretty common now. This is kind of an obsolete requirement.
But can you, I've tried that. Can you really participate driving down the road like 128 in a discussion and understanding what's going on? I tell you, it's, I have to pull over.
Well,
If they're gonna really participate in the meeting, I have questions about that being, safe, but also effective. Unless you've got, you're custom multitasker, not so much me, and.
well, it's policy. You don't have to, if you're a
Yeah.
member, you can say, I'm not gonna be in the meeting, or I am gonna pull in the rest stop at,
Right.
Yeah,
but if somebody is
Confident.
confident in their multitasking, or for that matter, if you're, on 495 at off hours, when you get the whole road to yourself, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, if I'm in the middle, if I'm in the middle of rush hour traffic, you're right, I cannot participate because I'm busy watching the traffic, okay?
hopefully.
But I would like the option if, I'm on, almost someplace and sort of, on the back road home.
I'm also thinking about, John, I'm thinking about like, sometimes we convene like single-purpose special meetings to approve something that, like during drive time in the morning.
Yeah.
And it'd be a lot easier if you could do that from the car. Very limited agenda, all you're doing is getting together to consent.
Okay.
So, and I mean, to your point, for a select board meeting where I think the public does expect you to be fully engaged, I probably wouldn't do that from the car. I'd probably stop or,
Right.
Yeah.
be stationary. But it comes
Okay.
up a few times when it'd be very convenient.
Leave it to the member's judgment then. Okay.
So going back to 4 then, so are we saying just quorum needs to be in the room? Because you said 2.
I'm sorry, I meant 2, in the 5 example.
Right,
So-
if it's the finance committee, it's a different quorum, because they
Right, so you're
have
just gonna specify quorum.
quorum,
Yeah.
correct, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. That's what I meant. Beyond the quorum, it'd be okay with the remote.
Perfect.
so do you want to vote on anything tonight? Do you want to have Kristen tidy it up and bring it back to us with a bow on it, or what's the will?
I'm fine with voting on it.
I'm fine with voting on
Okay.
it,
So is there a motion to
so moved,
Second,
approve?
Final
Okay.
With amendments.
as amended?
as amended.
As amended. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Request from the town clerk's office to renew annual licenses, which is our usual, I think, our signing festival that we
Yes.
have.
No, we don't have to sign it, don't
We
they?
do digital now.
Yeah,
for
right,
you.
but it's, I miss it, but yeah, it's,
You miss signing 60 different
it was
applications.
kind of fun to see all these businesses in town and say, wow, I didn't know we had that many, but
That is true, but anyway, I'll move to approve.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Request to authorize the town manager to submit a MBTA Catalyst Fund grant application. Do you want to explain that, Kristen, or
Yeah,
Mike?
absolutely. Giving the land use department the night off. As the town of Westford is now a fully approved MBTA community, we are eligible to apply for the MBTA Communities Catalyst Fund program. Working with the land use department, the pedestrian safety committee members, and potential developers and landowners, the land use management department would like to apply for a grant to study conceptual areas related to transportation connections, non-motorized transportation, such as walking and biking, and other improvements associated with the areas proximate to our MBTA zoning district. So we have in the packet this evening a description of that. We have just recently, as soon as this afternoon, received a proposal from a consultant related to this in the amount of just a little, I think it's $270,000. Again, this would not be town funds. We'd be applying for the Catalyst funds. The application is due on Sunday, so we're trying to get this in tomorrow as soon as possible.
I certainly see no harm in applying for a grant, and since we're one of the first communities to have our MBTA bylaw adopted and approved by the state, I think we should take full advantage of what we've done and apply for the grant. I mean, what's the worst that happens? They say no?
Well, part of the reason why we went for the MBT communities was because we could become eligible for grants, so this is, you know.
Right, exactly, so
John?
it seems,
Kristen, okay, is this just for a plan or just,
It is for a planning study, yes.
because, you know, one of the things in the MBTA thing is that the developers are usually responsible for any infrastructure improvements that are required
Right.
for their particular development to be viable. In other words, if it's traffic, it could be utilities or anything like
Right.
that. I wouldn't want to be in a position where we wind up having to spend extra money or commit to spending any of our budget on that.
Right, so this is a plan, so when a developer comes in with a housing proposal under MBTA, we can point them to this plan and say,
Okay.
these are the improvements that are required or that are
Necessary, yeah.
or that are desired to have these connections. So I think this positions us well to be able to direct those developers to how we want to develop in Westford.
Yeah, I think that's good, because at least it alerts them to the fact it's their nickel
Yes,
doing this and not the
right,
taxpayer.
but it shows
but it
forethought
gives
on our
us,
end.
at least from what I understand, it gives us a comprehensive plan
Right.
for that area, so that, you know, I mean, we don't expect one developer to do the whole thing, but you can start to say, okay, you're responsible for this, it's like a master plan.
Correct.
That's what it is.
And,
Yeah.
and because it's a grant, it doesn't cost the town anything.
And it doesn't cost
Here
us
is to get-
anything.
Well, yeah, and then it may just alert them to the fact that they do have to do that, and may put a little caution flag in front of them so they don't go running off
Right.
and doing something.
And there may be some things that come out of the plan that make more sense for the town to do rather than a developer, because it may be for the greater good of the town, but having this plan in place will help us allocate who needs to do what at what point in time.
Okay, good.
The proposal that we got is about $280,000, so that's how much we're gonna apply for the grant. We will go out for a normal bid process if we are awarded the grant.
Okay, good, thanks.
So is there a motion to approve the town manager's request?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then finally, request to authorize the town manager to submit a Department of Environmental Protection Technical Assistance Grant application for up to 80 hours of support to develop pay-to-throw implementation. Since we're all eager to do that, I think it makes sense that we try to find some money to help us implement it. But you want to speak to that, Kristen?
I will turn it over to Mike.
And then
for-
to John, you can ask a question.
Yeah, I had,
Yep, so, no money on this particular grant. This is actually an in-kind service grant
Okay.
from Mass DEP, from their local municipal coordinator. And essentially, this gives us help developing an implementation plan. So they will help us kind of work through any contract issues and really bring some expertise that we've really been using for the last couple months. We're playing catch-up with this, but no obligation with this. If we determine we don't move forward with the pay-as-you-throw plan, we don't have to pay anything back. This gets us the support, and more importantly, this is a prerequisite for the CART reimbursement grant or the pay-as-you-throw reimbursement grant. So we do have to have this in place so that whatever kind of plan we come up with, they can essentially endorse it and say, this is how we're gonna roll it out, and have helped us through those steps. So happy to answer any questions on it.
okay, I'm okay with that, because I remember when we looked at this the first time, there was kind of a hook in there that, to get this grant that we were talking about at the time or something, we had to commit to the pay-as-you-throw, and we weren't quite ready to do that. And, I don't know, this does not
No,
include a commitment.
this
to-
is no strings attached.
Okay.
Like I said, we've already kind of been using this service, and once we determine, hey, we don't know that we're moving forward definitively, but we're pretty sure we need to start really refining the implementation so we can put some real cost to it. Again, no obligation, and this is one of the conditions we would have with the CART reimbursement grant, is it would have to be approved. So whether that was a board decision or a determination was made to take that to town meeting, we would have to have that before seeking the reimbursement. But this lets us really get the implementation plan in place have all the costs dialed in, know what all the steps are gonna be, and exactly how we'd roll something out.
Good. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Board reports or updates? Okay, actually, I will give one. So just briefly, on Friday night, the Commission on Disabilities had its first Commission on Disability Social. It was integrated, town and other area towns who had interested parties. It was really, I think, for our first one, quite well attended. Enthusiastic people that were there. Good snacks, good music, crafts. It was. I went with my older son just to see it. We spent 2 hours because it was really that well done. So there will be more. Maybe a movie night forthcoming. Thanks to the commission who did a lot of work on this to make it happen. And to Rodenbush for letting us use facilities, and Westford members bought the pizza and chips, so all around a good community event. Else?
I don't have anything else.
So,
I'll move to waive reading of correspondence.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? And before we adjourn, just, everybody in Westford, hope you have a great holiday with your family and friends, and enjoy the spirit of Thanksgiving. That is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Good night, Westford. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving and stay safe.
Be safe.